Yeah, perfect. All right,
Okay,
so we were
so
at 40-60% before.
I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. I honestly think it's probably gonna happen next week. I mean, like, yeah, I can say 90-10, but I'm sure obviously there's always a chance that something won't like that the invasion won't happen,
Mhm.
some last minute change of plan, but I honestly think it's going to next week.
Okay. And
And there's a few things that tells this, I think.
yeah, so I was about to ask what makes you think, but before we do that, just a brief introduction of who you are, and then yeah, and then maybe like a brief summary of our previous conversation, just so everyone's caught up.
Yeah, so you can call me Richard or Richard Haney. My name is George, my actual name. And I have a Twitter page, unfortunately not a channel, as I should have because I'm awesome. But
Hmm.
I have graduated. I'm a military historian officially. I got a paper and all now. And I have followed the situation in Ukraine pretty closely the past couple of months,
Hmm.
and generally I don't know why, but like I tend to get overconsumed in those things that have to do with conflict and because of my background, I can also usually make a better and more educated guesses when it comes to these.
Hmm.
But yeah, I have followed this closely and um, some really concerning stuff. So go over to my Twitter and give me a follow. I mostly argue about irrelevant stuff there, but once in a while I give some interesting and maybe not as common opinions on certain uh, you know certain history or military related stuff that is mostly my expertise.
Okay, perfect. And then we had a conversation a few weeks back,
Yeah.
and yeah, what did you think about that? What were kind of like the most important points of that discussion? Would you say?
I think we basically hit on the motivations of Russia
Sorry,
and
but very
why this.
important here. I need to step in
Yeah,
here. Did you at any point say you Americans?
Americans. I don't. Did I say you Americans?
If you did, I need you to correct that. Okay, don't let me in with these fucking Americans. Okay, but otherwise, we're good to.
I am not a you Americans.
Okay, okay.
I
Wait,
am
it
an
wasn't
American.
chat. Far away was chat that said that. Okay, no, Zoe, cut that out of the segment. Get out, out. Nothing happened. No, okay, nothing happened. Shh. I didn't interrupt him talking about
Okay.
important military conflicts to make a joke about not being from America. Never happened. Anyway, yeah. So anyway, we had a conversation a few weeks ago, and yeah, about this type of stuff. What would you say are the main important like things that we talked about there that are going to be relevant now?
Well, we talked about Russian motivations and what they could seek in invading Ukraine. We talked about the disposition of the powers, why Russia might want to invade, and why it couldn't do it with more diplomatic or economic or political solutions. The main goals of Russia, keeping Ukraine out of NATO. Um, we talked about quite a few things, but I think in the end we concluded that okay, yeah, this is that I was more or less 50-50 or 60-40 that this will probably happen.
Hmm.
And since then, I think things have escalated rapidly. And a couple of things that I had talked about was that Russia would seek regime change in Ukraine, not an occupation, um, not a conventional the way we think about a country conquering another, like Germany and conquering Poland in World War II.
Hmm.
It's not like that. They're gonna seek to basically um, change the regime in order to install a more pro-Russian friendly regime
Hmm.
that stays out of NATO and probably in the Russian sphere of influence, much like Belarus is
Hmm.
right now. And and I think we also talked about maybe them making false flag attacks
Hmm.
to be able to start that invasion.
Yeah.
we also talked about a few more things about why Russia isn't as scared by sanctions, about uh, the Russian war chest. We talked about a few things, I think.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. And then one of the things I want to bring attention to that we talked about then, that I also want to talk about now, is always try to, like, obviously when it's possible, especially when it comes to issues like this that can be pretty, doom or like depressing to talk about, the solution orientation. So before we talked about a bit of like, okay, well, what can be done, and one of the main things that are talked about obviously is just NATO just being like fuck it and just going into Russia. But then the issue with that would be then if Russia decides I don't care, I'm going to do it anyway, then you have a world war on your hands because you're going to have American NATO troops there, and then that's not a risk that NATO is willing to take at the moment, to risk like another world war. Um, and then sanctions were the other major one. And for my understanding, it seemed like sanctions could be effective. But then again, you mentioned the thing about the war chest, and however how Russia has kind of like built a bit of an economy, with the capabilities of dealing with sanctions better than other countries can. And then how Germany and France, I believe it was, because of the oil pipeline, that Russia's involved in, have been kind of reluctant to place super heavy sanctions on Russia, and that was like one of
Germany
the major
mostly.
things. Germany
Yeah.
mostly, okay, yeah,
But
yeah.
in general, the EU, even though the US talks about heavy sanctions, the weight of those of the trade disruption would fall on the EU. It
Mm-hmm,
wouldn't fall on the US. The US and Russia have very little overlap in trade,
mm-hmm,
less than 5% of exports, I think, for each.
okay,
While it's closer to 40 for each when it comes to the EU and Russia, and it
mm-hmm,
mostly has to do with energy. So the Europeans are in a bit of a pickle when it comes to their power requirements.
I see. um Yeah, on that actually, something that I want to ask about before you get into why you think that the likelihoods for invasions are higher than last time we spoke. I know that Boris Johnson recently he made some pretty strong statements in the media, when it comes to the situation. He's saying that Russia, I think the quote was exactly something like Russia's preparing for a war on the scale of which we haven't seen since 1945. Basically, saying it's like Second World War caliber type stuff that they're planning there. He also mentioned sanctions, but more specifically, some like more heavy-reaching sanctions. Where he said that in collaboration with America, there was talks about not letting Russia's and firms that are based in Russia operate and deal with assets or capital that is in pounds or in dollars, which is pretty major. Even though there might not be a lot of like direct overlap between America and Russia's economy, the US dollar has a pretty big part of the international market as a whole. So that might be a bit more effective. What do you think about that?
Well, there's a couple of things there. First, I think Boris Johnson kind of wants to play Churchill.
Mm-hmm.
His his political career right now is very
Not doing good.
uncertain,
Yeah.
specifically because of those parties that have been happening in Number 10,
Mm-hmm.
uh, Downing Street, and the whole scandal that's threatening to bring down the government or bring a vote of no confidence.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he keeps trying to pivot to that. I'm not sure if they could manage this though. Say best case scenario, and they can manage to put sanctions and blocking Russian companies from using dollars or pounds. Um, if you see the breakdown of the Russian war chest,
Mm-hmm.
the money reserve that basically Russia has accumulated,
Mm-hmm.
yes, a large portion of it is dollars and pounds,
Mm-hmm.
but still about half of it is in other currencies
Mm-hmm.
that will not be affected by such a block.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think those are often even, you know, uh, really, they don't often happen the same. They aren't always 100% effective. None of this is 100% effective.
Mm-hmm.
There's always
Ways to get around it and
small,
stuff. Yeah.
yeah, ways to get around it, small loopholes, and of course the EU isn't gonna ban the Russians from using the euro.
Mm-hmm.
So as long as that doesn't happen,
And that's because of Germany in large part. Do you think?
I think that's because Europe is just far too big to coordinate something like that very quickly. Even if Germany and France were in it, I think it would be something that more of the member states would have to agree on.
Mhm.
I'm not 100% sure how uh, such a um, such a move would work on the part of the European Union.
Mhm.
I just don't know how the EU Parliament would work with something like that, or how Brussels would do anything.
So you think it's
I
more like a
honestly
bureaucratic challenge than there for the EU to do that?
I think it might be a bureaucratic challenge, but this is mostly me doing guesswork. I'm not 100% sure how Europe would go ahead with something like that. But
Mhm.
as long as the euro remains in play for Russia, their war chest is fine.
Okay. Um, yeah, sounds good. And I just wanna mention that. Yeah, I appreciate the caveat when it's something that you're not
Mm.
sure about, and you mentioned that you're doing guesswork. I think that's important to do. So yeah, I appreciate
Yeah,
that. When it comes to the first thing,
I'm not perfect. I don't know like that much about the internal workings of the EU.
yeah, don't worry. Not a lot of people do, but at least you're ready to admit it and recognize it, which is important. But
Yeah.
when it comes to the Boris thing, I definitely understand, and this was one of the major things that was actually brought up in the article I read about this, which was that Boris is having a bit of a rough time in the UK. So any kind of like distraction or any, especially things like war and situations like this, which typically increase the support for the government in charge, is obviously something that's going to benefit him on domestic political front. So there's definitely that aspect to consider as well. So yeah, it's a good
Yeah, I
point.
mean, emulating, the conservative leader Churchill,
Hmm.
it does. Talking about World War II and Britain in the
Yeah.
40s, so you're almost always trying to emulate Churchill.
Hmm. And
Almost
nostalgia and all
always.
that. Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, basically, the idea of Britain standing alone against some menace.
Hmm. Exactly. Um, Okay, yeah. So now back to Russia, I guess. So before you said that you thought it was like 40, like 60-40, the risks of invasion, and now you're at like 90-10. So what changed?
Okay, so a few things happened. First, well, Russia said that it would withdraw its troops.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but instead of a withdrawal, what happened is the exact opposite. More troops started pouring in,
Mm-hmm.
which is it, what that tells me is that there is a narrative that Russia has decided upon how it will play this out.
Mm-hmm.
So it says, we'll withdraw now, and something will happen which will force us to get back in. We were withdrawing before,
Mm-hmm.
but now we'll have to go in.
Okay.
So, but of course, military preparations won't stop, if that is the case. So
Mm-hmm.
they say they withdraw, but instead they went from having 120,000 troops to having around 200,000 troops
Okay.
near Ukraine. Um, there are other major red flags. First of all,
So is it fine if
uh,
I stick on the if I stop on this for a minute and
yes,
just
of
yeah,
course,
okay.
yes.
So yeah, you said they had around like something 100,000 something before, and now they're up at 200,000. Despite them saying that they're withdrawing, do they have any public excuse or reasoning for why they have 200,000 right now? Or
Not really. They mentioned the exercises in Belarus for
Mhm.
why they had troops in Belarus, but now those exercises are over. But they're keeping them there.
Okay.
So,
Have they
well, we
withdrawn any troops to our knowledge?
they have posted videos of troops being withdrawn, but that's just videos of APCs, our personnel carriers, BMP, stuff like that, just moving on trains, which just isn't
Yeah, it's not
doesn't
proof by any means. Yeah,
mean anything. It could be moving in any direction.
yeah.
It could have been moving last year.
Hmm.
There have been a lot of
Could be moving. Yeah,
videos.
and a video from earlier of them moving to the border. Who fucking knows? Yeah, it could
Yeah,
be illustrated.
exactly. There has also been a lot of videos that have been coming out of the separatist regions
Hmm.
in Donetsk and Luhansk. A lot of media coverage that was supposed to be covering news that were happening that day, but
Hmm.
were instead recorded earlier. And
Okay.
you could tell that from the metadata in the
Oh
videos.
wow. Okay.
Yeah, so some really sloppy work there.
Okay.
Um,
And what was the
so,
purpose of that?
well, if you're building a narrative for false flag attacks
Oh, okay.
and you've pre-planned the attacks, you might as well pre-record um, the news coverage of the attacks.
Hmm.
The thing is, yeah, going back to why I think the invasion is imminent, basically.
Hmm.
Um, the apart from moving all these troops back near Ukraine, they
Mm-hmm.
have they have now moved from their deployment areas
Mm-hmm.
uh, into towns and cities that are even closer to the Ukrainian border.
Okay.
So some of them are um, between 0 and 30 kilometers
Okay.
distance from Ukraine, which
Mm-hmm.
is in military terms, it's point blank range. You're
Mm-hmm.
really close. When we're talking about major military formations, 30 kilometers is no breathing space. It's really, really, really close.
Mm-hmm.
So there is that. There has also been some pontoon bridges erected
Mm-hmm.
in the Pripyat River, and that's off in the near Chernobyl,
Mm-hmm.
basically, and the exclusion zone. So there's a pretty, I think there's a plan there to move through the exclusion zone, and into strike towards Kiev from that direction.
You said sorry. You said something about some bridges.
Yes.
What was that? It was something specific, right?
So there were some pontoon bridges that
Okay.
were erected on the Pripyat River.
I have no idea what those are.
Pontoon bridges are basically temporary military bridges. They tend to get erected when you want troops to quickly cross a river.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of you building a whole bridge, you just put in the pontoons. They're usually there if the rivers are big enough.
Mm-hmm.
They're floating barges that are connected. Some of them are deployed by trucks that move a bridge that unfolds and covers the distance of the river. It really depends.
Mm-hmm.
If you can find the pictures of the pontoon bridges over the Pripyat,
Mm-hmm.
if you look for them.
Okay. Let me see.
Um, yeah,
Bridges over. What was the name of the river?
Pripyat.
Okay, I'm gonna do my very best. Okay, pontoon bridges over. How do I spell that?
Pripyat.
Yep.
I'm pretty sure it is Pripyat, but it might be the Y in the beginning. I
I
think it's
think we found it here.
yeah. I said it correctly the first time. It is Pripyat with
Okay.
the I in the beginning, then Y. Uh, it's-
All right. Yeah, we see it here. Reported by Business Insider, uawire.org, Pledge Times, Euronews, BBC. So yeah, there's quite a lot
yeah,
of people on this. Okay, yeah.
I mean, I think we had also spoken about field hospitals and stuff. This is
Mm-hmm.
just another one of those small clues that you're planning on going in.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, why erect a bridge there?
Mm-hmm.
There's if you're just posturing, there's really no point. You could be invading from anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but this clearly outlines one like route, a plan of invasion.
Mm-hmm.
And if you see the position of river, that river crossing, it's directly north of Chernobyl.
Okay.
So there, the exclusion zone is obviously not heavily populated with troops, and it's over the big river that we
Mm-hmm.
talked about. That is the big obstacle to Russian troops, which is the Dnieper.
Mm-hmm.
And if they are, on the other side of that river, and they have the pontoon bridge up north where the river is really not that um, wide.
Mm-hmm. Then they
Um,
have a yeah. They have a
then
way.
you have a very easy striking direction towards Kiev
Mm-hmm.
and Ziritomir. So if my idea that they're seeking to capture the to capture as much of the Ukrainian government as possible, or try to get them to get regime change, I
Mm-hmm.
think they're gonna be gunning for Kiev for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Um,
I think that's from most of what I've read as well. I think the
yeah,
same BBC article that reported on the Boris Johnson thing There was an analyst there that said that the main strategy is probably going to be to get to Kiev as soon as possible, and there's also troops then in the north of Kiev that are also there nearby. But so
Yeah.
that seems like the one of the major things that people are predicted, like going into Kiev through that way.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, was warned to try to attend some Munich conference this weekend,
Hmm.
in order to avoid being in Ukraine while something might happen,
Okay.
which makes me think that it's about to happen. Maybe even in the beginning of the week of the coming week.
Hmm.
Um, maybe there was also an article, I think, from ABC,
Hmm.
um, that they had, or CBS, I'm not sure, one of the two, that the Russian army had received their orders,
Okay.
to which
Wait, had they received the orders to invade?
not immediately, but their
Okay.
plan of action, basically.
Okay.
Um,
So how was this? How was this? How did anyone get their hands on this order?
um, I think it's all been part of U.S. strategy. They've been basically declassifying information that normally wouldn't be out there, as a
Okay.
plan to basically detail what we know and why Russia's steps are predictable.
Okay.
Uh,
In an attempt to
because
dissuade Russia.
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
They basically are telling Russia, well, we know every step you're gonna take,
Hmm.
so you might as well
Not.
uh, not exactly.
Yeah.
Um, I'm trying to find the specific article, but yeah, where did I find that? Just a second.
So I guess this was deciphered by American intelligence, or
Yeah, yeah, it was CBS. Yeah, if you Google invasion orders, you literally get the first article.
okay.
So yeah, U.S. Has intel.
Yep. U.S. has intel. I'm gonna. How long is this? This is a short. I think we'll go over this. Oh my God! Go away, advertisements. Thank you. Okay.
Jesus, yeah, I'm getting advertisements. Okay, I'm
A,
closing that.
B, C. Okay. U.S. has intel that Russia commanders have orders to proceed with Ukraine invasions. Um, Washington. The U.S. has intelligence that Russia commanders have received orders to proceed with an invasion of Ukraine, with commanders on the ground making specific plans for how they would maneuver into sectors of battlefield, said a U.S. official to CBS News. The orders don't mean invasion is a certainty, as Russian President Vladimir Putin could still change the orders if he changes his mind, the official said. After weeks of warning about an invasion of Ukraine being imminent, President Biden told reporters on Friday that he was convinced Putin had made the decision to invade Ukraine, and said the US believed Russian forces intended to attack in the coming days. Secretary of State Antony Blinken told Face the Nation that the US still believes Russia is moving forward with plans to invade, despite denials from Moscow and Russia is preparing despite denials from Moscow that Russia is preparing to launch an attack. Everything we're seeing tells us that the decision we believe President Putin has made is to invade. I'm terrible at reading this. Oh my God. Okay. Everything we're seeing tells us that the decision we believe President Putin has made to invade is moving forward, Blinken said. We've seen that with provocations created by Russians or separatist forces over the weekend, false flag operations, now the news just this morning that the exercises in Russia was engaged in Belarus with 30,000 Russian forces that was supposed to end this weekend will now continue because of tensions in eastern Ukraine, tensions created by Russia and the separatist forces it backs there. Russia has massed roughly 150,000 troops, warplanes, and equipment on Ukraine's three sides, escalating tensions with the neighboring country. The defense minister of Belarus also announced Russia will be extending military drills taking place in the country near Ukraine's northern borders, which brought a large contingent of Russian troops to Belarus. In anticipation of an attack, the US and other allies, most recently Germany and Austria, have urged their citizens to leave the country. The US embassy in Ukraine will also temporarily relocate its operations from Kiev to Liev due to the acceleration of the buildup of Russian forces. While top US officials have warned Russia is poised to strike, Ukraine and the Pentagon have sent While top US officials have warned Russia is poised to strike, Ukraine and the Pentagon has sent roughly 5,000 troops to Eastern Europe to bolster NATO forces. The Biden administration continues to keep a diplomatic option on the table. The president has stressed no American forces would go into Ukraine if Russia invades. My job as a diplomat is to leave absolutely no stone unturned and see if we can prevent war. And if there's nothing I can do to do that, I'm going to do it. If there's anything I can do to do that, I'm going to do it, Blinken said Sunday. President Biden has made very clear that he's prepared to meet President Putin at any time in any format if that can help prevent a war. Even if the die is cast, until it's settled, until we know that the tanks are rolling, the planes are flying, and the aggression has fully begun, we're going to do everything we can to prevent it, but we're prepared either way. Oksana Markarova, Ukraine's ambassador to the US, said Ukrainian officials are using every possibility to force Russia to choose a diplomatic path rather than an attack. We are calling not only on the aggressor, which is Russia, but also on all of our friends and allies to get together and use every opportunity to still deter Russia from invading, she told Face the Nation. Markarova said that while Ukraine will work day and night to make use of any possibility to still prevent Russia from invading, events of the past few days indicate that an escalation is likely, contrary to the comments from Russian ambassador to the US, Anatoly Antonov, that there is no plan for Russia to invade. What we see right now are all the strong messages. What we see right now are all the strong messages are yet to get to Russia. Not only to get out from the borders of Ukraine, but they also, during the past few days, started an offensive, she said. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, too, has called on Putin to meet with him to work to resolve the crisis, but he also criticized Western leaders gathered at a security conference in Munich on Saturday, arguing that they should not wait for an attack to hit Russia with sanctions. The Biden administration has warned that if Putin orders an attack on Ukraine, there would be steep consequences for Russia, and Blinken said Sunday that slapping Russia with sanctions now would mean the loss of the deterrent effect. Once you trigger the sanctions, you lose the deterrent effect, they said. As long as there still even is a minute's worth of time in which we can deter and prevent a war, we're going to try to use it. Blinken added that the US doesn't want to detail its plans publicly, as that will forewarn Russia. I misread that like 3 times. I hope that's okay, though.
It's all right.
All right.
No, you read much faster than I do. So
That's
that makes
probably
it
why I
better.
messed up a few times, but yeah. Anyway.
Well, as you can see, things are grim, and it doesn't end there, unfortunately. There has been a lot of stuff that has been going on regarding more of the false flag side of things,
Mm-hmm.
and also movement in at sea. There's
Mm-hmm.
also been a lot of Russian ships that have been filmed moving out of the Azov Sea.
Okay.
Um, there have been also uh, this is of course this is unreliable, but there's also some information coming out of Transnistria that there have been forces that are mobilizing there, which
Coming
is
out of
really
where, sorry?
Transnistria. Have you
Okay.
heard of Transnistria?
Nope.
Transnistria is this little separatist sliver between Moldova and
Okay.
Ukraine,
Mm-hmm.
which is completely unrecognized and backed by the Russians.
Mm-hmm.
It is a really, really, really weird little piece of country.
Okay.
You can Google it and find it in a map. Maybe something that would probably help. Are you aware of Live UI map? UA map?
Live UA map, what did you say?
Yeah, you just if you write out live
Found it.
UAMAP, yeah, with Ukraine, you'll find a bunch more stuff that'll help out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see.
Yeah, perfect. Do you see that sliver between Moldova and Ukraine? It has a little YouTube
Yep,
button on the left.
I see it.
Yeah, that is Transnistria,
Mm-hmm.
and it's basically a pro-Russian separatist little enclave,
Okay.
basically. Um, that is not recognized, but I think anybody else other than the Russians.
Okay,
Uh,
okay.
Now, a few concerning things that have been going on in Donetsk and Luhansk. There have been mass evacuations of civilians
Okay.
from the area. There have been a lot of explosions that were heard in I think uh, in both Donetsk and Luhansk. That they were reports of even artillery shells supposedly from the Ukrainian army hitting within Russian territory near Rostov,
Mm-hmm.
which sounds incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I what concerns me is that also there's been a lot of ceasefire violations. There's been a lot of troop movements inside the separatist regions and some mobilization going on there. So what I'm wondering is we haven't heard the big one yet, if you understand what I mean. We've heard, like slimmers of false flag attacks, but we haven't heard the one that we say, well, this is the one, that'll trigger the attack. We've heard
Mm-hmm.
about buildings being hit and Russia blaming it all on the Ukrainian military.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Supposedly civilians being killed, clashes in border posts.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, there's also, if you zoom in further, you'll see there's also a little border post in thing Shashta, which also closed because it was shelled repeatedly.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so yeah, if you scroll real close, you'll see it's the only little blue uh, button in the separatist region in Donetsk, Luhansk.
Oh
Uh,
fuck. Okay. It's this one over here, yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think you should be able to find.
Shlasti, fuck. Shastia checkpoint suspended work due to repeated shellings.
Yes.
Okay, I found it.
So, and another thing also, basically a big part of the Russian Air Force has also been deployed in airfields nearby.
Mm-hmm.
Some sources say that I think 75% of Russia's military is now deployed. Basically, the
Mm-hmm.
active part. Not We're not talking about reserves. The active part. Some 75% of the active army has been deployed now
Mm-hmm.
near Ukraine. So honestly, seeing all this, what I am waiting for to say, well, now it's going to happen. I'm waiting for this a really big event, a some sort of false flag attack
Mm-hmm.
that is going to be something momentous, spectacular, if you wish. It's going to be something big. That's what I'm expecting, and I'm expecting it to happen sometime next week because right now, uh, the Russians throw out a ton of accusations that almost none of them stick, and what it seems to me like is a build-up, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Suppose it for that there's a narrative going on where the Russians were going to withdraw. There's increased tension in Donetsk and Luhansk. Um, the separatists mobilize and evacuate their civilians,
Mm-hmm.
and then the supposedly big Ukrainian attack against them happens.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this Ukrainian attack isn't happening. The Ukrainians are absolutely not risking any
Yeah.
kind of provocation.
Literally
But
no reason for Ukraine to do that. Yeah.
yes, of course, but something will happen. I think it will be bombed, maybe in either Donetsk or Luhansk, um, and then that will hit frontline news everywhere,
Mm-hmm.
and then the invasion will begin because they're they're ready. Everything is set up already. I,
You just need the
they're
ignition. Yeah.
Yes, they're holding the trigger. They're
Mm-hmm.
pointing the gun.
Mm-hmm.
It's ready. It's primed. It's there.
Mm-hmm.
It's really 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 terrifying. It's the disposition of forces just from a military perspective and what they could do, what they could be planning, is just completely unprecedented, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah. And
because
mhm.
you can see, I've seen a lot of people talking, oh yeah, Russia's just deploying, troops inside Russia. This is so naive. Oh my.
And
I
that's
I
why it's important to have like, because if you have like soldiers right like so close to each other, right, like you said 0 30 kilometers, like that kind of range, then it makes things more tense because if there's a small fuck up, then it's gone. And that's why you kind of like general standard practice is to keep a bigger distance in between to kind of like ease tensions and reduce this stuff. But if Russia's like breathing down Ukraine's neck, then something small just needs to happen.
Yeah, if I had to describe it, it's let's say you have two neighbors, right? There are two houses, and there's then both of them have guns, and
Hmm.
then there's also the an observer that says, "Oh, of course, there's no tension," and they said, "Okay, well, they're moving their guns out around in their house." Well, there's a difference between holding your gun in your gun safe, having a lock on it, having the shells in the drawer, whatever,
Hmm.
and then having arrayed all your guns in your windows,
Exactly. Yeah.
barricaded, and pointed them all at your neighbor's house.
Yeah. Exactly. It's like,
Saying at that
it's just my
point, saying,
property,
yeah,
bro. Come on, it's just me
yeah,
moving my shit. Like.
it's my property, but you're pointing all your guns at me for some reason.
Uh-huh.
So basically, this is the equivalent of that.
I see.
Um, yeah, and you also mentioned at some point Hassan's coverage during this whole oh, no Russia invasion yet. I don't know. If
I can give you a brief rundown if you want.
Sure, go ahead.
So his big thing was that just like, oh, there is never any risk for invasion. It's just America like kind of doing war drums or whatever for military industrial complex stuff. Like there's actually going to be a war. It's just a big nothing burger that is done to, I don't know, like
Sell weapons to Ukraine.
something. It's either that or it's like military industrial complex stuff, or it's like U.S. reinforcing its role as big brother, like one of those things. And then there was like, and then the thing happened, where Russia said that they would move back troops and they would retreat. And then Hassan made a video. He's like, "I see, I'm right. There isn't going to be any war." So
Oh, okay, of course.
yeah.
I see. Yeah, I don't think I don't think he's paying any real attention. I think he has already decided it's not going to happen, and
Mm-hmm.
that it's all American propaganda. I mean, if it is the military industrial complex doing all this, well, bravo. This is some real dedication
Uh-huh.
getting Russia to play along for like a decade. Uh, invading Crimea.
They're just playing the long game, bro. Come on.
Yeah, they're playing the long game. That's a really long game to sell some javelins, if I'm honest. That's oof, yeah, that's a big one.
Uh-huh.
What else? Yeah, getting all the European allies panicked and them sending weapons to Ukraine. I wonder, is that also part of the plan?
Who knows?
How far does this go? This is similar to saying, uh, the the pandemic was manufactured by Pfizer or something
Mm-hmm.
to sell the Pfizer vaccine. I mean, okay, yeah, sure.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think any of this is. I don't think Hassan is really paying any close or real attention to this, and he's just predisposed to dismissing everything as America bad. Which, sure, yes. I'm not a huge fan of the United States and its foreign policy, considering almost everything they have lied about. But honestly, you need to look at context clues. Um, and this is not America gearing up for a regime change war, as some people have been saying. There is absolutely zero chance of America ever trying regime change in Russia in that military sense that people talking about. Russia is not Iraq.
Mm-hmm.
It's not. It just isn't. If anyone needs further explanation on that, I'm really sorry, but I don't know. I guess look at a map, uh, maybe. Um, this isn't happening.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Regime change in Ukraine for what reason? Ukraine is already friendly to the West because of the whole situation with Russia going on the past
Mm-hmm.
decade. So really, I don't understand where this whole thing is coming from.
Mm-hmm.
um, and I think it's unfortunate because sometimes you're predisposed to talking about the excesses of one country, and then you completely forget that other countries can also be terrible.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just that America has been really terrible when it comes to their foreign policy.
Mm-hmm.
And we shouldn't trust anything they say. Sure, you don't even have to trust the Americans. You could look at everybody else because
Mm-hmm.
everyone is paying attention to this. It's not just the Americans, just talking out of order with the rest of the world, you know. And there's also photos of Russian troops,
Mm-hmm.
everywhere. Satellite pictures, movements with locations, uh, the dispositions, pontoon bridges, air forces, helicopters, the Black Sea Fleet moving around.
It might be like he's like saying that, oh, because US has like, has put up his war drums, now Russia's actually worried, but then it still wouldn't explain things like the bridges, for instance, that you mentioned. Like that's not a
Yeah.
defensive position, so
What would Russia be worried about? An invasion by Ukraine?
yeah, exactly,
Why would Ukraine do this? Why would America, if it is America that's supposed to invade Russia, why would they do that? That's if America ever invaded Russia, that would be nuclear holocaust. I don't know how to describe that better. It would be death for everybody.
Mhm.
They're not going to do that. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
And basically, the U.S. has from almost from the beginning said that they're not going to deploy NATO troops in Ukraine, just to make 100% sure
Hmm.
uh, that to not provoke Russia into doing anything even crazier.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's completely insane to me, at least.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I think Laser Kiwi said it best. I don't know if you've considered the fact that war companies actually invented Ukraine to sell more wars.
I
But
see. Yes,
yeah,
that is a very compelling point.
yeah.
I'll
Apart
be
from
honest.
that whole and your logic, the rest of the things you're saying
Yes,
make sense.
apart from the manufacture of Ukraine by Lockheed Martin,
True.
yeah,
Yeah.
we're completely off.
One thing I'm thinking about though, is so I mean, there's obviously the possibility for a false flag, like Russia bombing their own shit, and then being like, oh shit, look, this was Ukraine. Um, I'm wondering then how likely do you think the possibility is for there being some form of like rogue or insurgent group that is inside Ukraine's borders, and that they take some action in order to like spur Russia on then? So I mean, it's not the Ukrainian government, it's nothing official with Ukraine, obviously, but it's like a Ukrainian group of Russian sympathizers that sets something off. And then Russia blames it on Ukraine as is. Do you think that that's something that could potentially happen, or how do you feel about that?
I'm not sure if anything like that has been prepared, or if anything like that happened. I think Russia would add it to their list of things they're gonna you know uh, blame Ukraine on for the false flag. If anything like that happens, it will certainly be added on. But it looks to me like there's a predetermined course of action here
Hmm.
when it comes to the order of operations and the media campaign that Russia has been on lately. Um, and you can see also in the crisis map, if you go and zoom into Donetsk, you'll see, for example, there's a little mushroom cloud like thing
There are
in
mushroom clouds everywhere.
yeah, well, those are the ones in the border, but you zoom into Donetsk.
Yeah, I see it.
Yeah.
Multiple explosions heard in the center of Donetsk. Reuters.
So what I'm thinking is there's gonna be some really big headlines with a really, really much bigger explosion. Not
Hmm.
just, oh, we're hearing explosions around. There's gonna be some sort of poorly cobbled together expose by Russia of supposed either Ukrainian war crimes or um, uh, like a ethnic cleansing of Russian civilians, something like that,
Hmm.
and that the evacuations were made in order to avoid maybe to stop the Ukrainian army from executing Russian speaking civilians en masse, something like that.
Hmm. Yeah, I see. Um, well, fuck.
Yeah, I wish I had better news or to say there's a course of action that the West could take,
Hmm.
but I think it's the 12th hour. If you understand, the doomsday clock.
Hmm.
it's all. I think it's all up to Russia now. I think they've already looked at their cards and they're deciding, you know, uh, how to play. I think they've already decided, if I'm
Mm-hmm.
honest with you, to invade, and it's a matter of time. Something really extraordinary would have to happen next week, I think, for that invasion to not take place.
Okay.
Some people say it would be the 22nd. Some people say it's the 24th. Some people say it's gonna be right like at the beginning of next month. But I think it's coming.
Okay, I see. Yeah, so 90-10. That's where you're at the moment.
90-10, yeah, and that's chart
I see.
more like 95-5, maybe.
All right. You know, well, yeah. Um.
I don't. I want to be wrong. Really,
Mhm.
I I don't want to be that certain that it's gonna happen. Uh, but I'm really certain.
Mhm.
And if there's one thing, I really don't know what Hassan will say. You know, if
Yeah.
it, if they invade, I don't know what will Hassan say.
Uh.
Will he bow
There
his
was
head
a
in shame?
no, 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 no,
I don't
no,
think he'll
no.
call everyone a dumb fuck, right?
Yeah, ban them all. That's how it goes. Um.
I guess so.
And then uh I don't know. Biden actually dressed up as Putin after killing him, and is now making a war against Ukraine, pretending to be Russia, and then Lockheed Martin is selling a war. Yeah, something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah.
It's really unfortunate. I just a couple of things I think we should go over.
Mm-hmm.
If slash when this invasion takes place,
Mm-hmm.
we're gonna be looking at tens, if not hundreds of thousands of casualties
Mm-hmm.
because there's gonna be the Russians depend on their artillery a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't they aren't all about being really discreet or precise with their bombing.
Mm-hmm.
They're gonna launch a massive bombing campaign. They're gonna hit military installations, cities, infrastructure. There's gonna be, I guess, power networks, airfields. There, tens of thousands of casualties, uh, and then they're gonna roll in. And I think their initial objectives will for sure be certain crossings on the Dnieper and Kiev.
Mm-hmm.
So there's gonna be Mariupol isn't a crossing on the Dnieper,
Mm-hmm.
but Mariupol will certainly be an objective. Kharkiv will be an objective because it's really close to, and it's really pro-Russian, very close to the border.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, there is there, and they're gonna definitely look for the southern crossings in Dnipro and perhaps Dnipropetrovsk.
Mm-hmm.
I'm forgetting them. I saying the name wrong. Yeah, no, Dnipropetrovsk is the oblast, is the area.
Mm-hmm.
Dnipro is the town. But yeah, what I'm wondering about with the Transnistria uh, allegations of them mobilizing is whether or not, and also the Black Sea Fleet moving, is whether or not they're going to try to strike and take Odessa,
Mm-hmm.
which would be a really interesting strategy because Odessa is even though it's fairly pro-Russian, it's not exactly in their regular way.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering, would they meet up with troops that are coming from the south? How far into Ukraine are they really willing to go?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think worst case scenario, if you could look at the map,
Mm-hmm.
I think the worst case scenario is drawing a line down between. So imagine a line in the middle where it cuts from Ziritomir all the way down to the border of Transnistria. So look at Transnistria. Uh,
Okay, yeah.
and
So like all the way like this.
yeah, from the north tip of Transnistria all the way up to Ziritomir, and that little red dot, that's the deployment zone.
Okay.
This is worst case scenario.
Okay.
Another thing they could do is leave a big bulge in the middle and just meet up with Transnistria by moving some forces and from the south and trying to reach them that way. But that's only if they try to go for Odessa. They might not even attempt that and just stick to the river, maybe capture some crossings and get to Kiev, which would be, I think, best case scenario. But Kiev will be coming under attack, I think, because there would be no point in invading part of Ukraine without
Taking
getting through
Kiev.
that, without taking Kiev or trying to topple the Ukrainian government in some, because
That's the main
uh,
purpose, installing a public government.
yes, occupying Ukraine, it has a really big population
Mm-hmm.
and a fairly well armed population,
Mm-hmm.
especially with the whole National Guard and training of reservists and training of this militia, People's Army. They have been doing quite a few things, and there would be a pretty big insurgency. So I think they're going for a quick and bloody victory, I think.
Yeah. I have so two questions from chat here that I'm going to ask you. One about what you just said. So, wait, is he saying that they're going to attack the pro-Russia areas with artillery, or where does he think artillery is going to be used in population areas?
Oh, I'm not sure they're going to use artillery for the false flag attacks because it would be pretty weird. You would have to position the guns
On their
closer to the
side?
Ukrainians
Yeah.
shooting in. They probably use explosions of some type. No, when they would be opening up with self-propelled artillery, they would be opening up on probably mostly military installations, and because of the way Russians have bombed in the past, they might also hit population centers,
Mhm.
depending on industrial output, stuff like that.
Okay, makes sense.
I can't say for sure. Of course, there's
Unless
no
you're
way to
secretly
know.
Putin.
As
Uh,
unless I'm secretly Putin, I'm not sure what they would hit. Of course, military installations, infrastructure, logistics centers, airfields. Um, this is the kind of targets you have if you're going for an overwhelming immediate strike against the military.
mhm.
Uh, so I'm mostly inclined to say that they would target those and try to avoid really major population centers. But
You never know.
when there's such a big bombing campaign, civilians are bound to die. There's
Hmm.
no way of avoiding it because people live around military installations. It's not they're often not just
Yeah,
they're not always off in some remote location. Sometimes they're next to cities. Sometimes there's barracks, near towns.
yeah, I see. Okay, second question here. Rosers, can you ask him if he thinks Russia is in a losing position? The sanctions plus an insurgency campaign in Ukraine on top of an already struggling economy seems like a bad road to go down. So I know you've already asked us a bit with the war coffers, or answered this, but feel free to take another stab at it.
So, one, a big insurgency. As I had said, I don't think the Russians are planning on occupying Ukraine for very long. They just wish to have to to uh, to have regime change in Ukraine. Now, I don't know if they have a plan B, if I'm honest.
Mm-hmm.
If that fails, will they stay in eastern Ukraine, try to control that part? If, for example, the government say manages to flee to Lviv and decides to say, okay, we're gonna fight to the very last. We're gonna fight this war until everything is destroyed. Will the Russians keep pushing further in, or will they just sit and try to control an insurgency? Um, I think they aren't thinking of insurgency because they hope to capture the Ukrainian government
Mm-hmm.
and the apparatus of the Ukrainian state.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, I think they're hoping to avoid insurgency. If they are dragged into an insurgent war, they will definitely be in a losing position
Mm-hmm.
because that would be a big drag on the Russian economy. And because the viewer did mention the Russian economy underperforming, as I said, they don't have to be the strongest economy in the world. They just have to have enough of a disposition to survive this. Um, and the way the some of part of the reason why the Russian economy is underperforming, especially with the stats that we're used to, like such as GDP growth,
Mm-hmm.
um, or a lot of that has to do with Russians instead of investing in helping their population or in social programs and um, in development, they've been puffing up their war chest and trying to and try to drive their debt way down.
Mm-hmm.
Having something close to 14, 15% GDP as a national debt for such a big country and such a struggling economy is really odd,
Mm-hmm.
and it does show that the Russians are doing something which would fiscally not make as much sense if you're just hoping to keep peace
Mm-hmm.
and grow your economy. Say running a small deficit uh, and just uh, diversifying your energy sector, investing with that big war chest into other uh, more important areas of the economy, so that money isn't just sitting around. But I think that they've structured their economy around being able to survive the wave of sanctions and economic hardship that comes their way.
Mm-hmm.
And they had done that before. They before in 2014,
Mm-hmm.
before invading Ukraine. And not only that, they made their war chest much bigger and much more diversified,
Mm-hmm.
which would make you think that they're trying to avoid any type of blowback that would hurt the Russian economy.
Mm-hmm.
So they're minimizing the damage to the Russian economy as much as possible. So yeah,
Okay, I see what you mean. All right, let's see here.
Zoe is asking a question, but has Russia considered the optics of this?
Sure. Have they? I don't know if they have.
That's a great question. So
Yeah,
yes, the Russians have been thinking long and hard about how they will look.
true. Definitely. Yeah, that's a chief concern for Russia. And then follow-up question was if Ukraine goes well for Russia, is East Moldova next? I would guess no. That would be
Uh,
my guess on that.
East Moldova, that would be Transnistria.
Oh, okay.
That would be the I think the little sliver.
Okay, but isn't that already sympathetic to Russia?
It is. I'm not sure what would happen if they could reach it or how they would integrate it in in Russian territory if they did.
So it's kind of like
Uh,
Russia sympathetic, but not like
so
officially part of
yeah,
it.
I'm not sure how annexations would work in this sense because annexing is much more complicated than just controlling the government of the of the adjacent
State.
state that
Hmm.
you're wishing to control.
Okay. All right. That makes sense. Yeah, I think those are all the questions. So unless you have anything else to add, I think that's pretty much it.
Um, honestly, just I hope that everyone understands the magnitude of this situation. It is an extremely dangerous situation, and it I think if this war happens, which to me seems increasingly likely, there's going to be really major implications, um, not only for the world economy but for what this means, the idea of the long peace. Everything is a bit up in flames.
Hmm. Yeah,
It
especially for
is.
an area like Europe, that
Yeah,
has
yeah.
seen
It is.
such
It's not
unprecedented
something that
priests.
we're used to.
Exactly.
Yeah. And honestly, the loss of life will be uh,
Tremendous.
unthinkable.
Mm.
And the war crimes. There's going to be a lot of war crimes. This
Yeah,
is going to be unavoidable.
let's see.
So honestly, I suggest trying to follow the news as closely as possible. Um, Twitter isn't great for following this. It
Twitter isn't
has
great for anything. Let's be fucking honest.
yeah, yeah, that's a good point.
Uh-huh.
But Twitter isn't the best. This site is pretty good. The live UI map. It has a lot of it has some decent sources, and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it will tell you if the source isn't great, like the Transnistria one.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you can also, funnily enough, there's a Ukrainian conflict Reddit that has been following this also pretty closely, which has some interesting information. But I don't think they have much more than what this website has. They mostly just repost from this website.
Okay, I see.
Um, I wish I had more insider information. I was working at some defense agency. I
I
could
don't
tell
think
you.
if you had more inside information from a defense agency, you'd be able to talk about it like this with me on stream. So, um,
I see. Lucas is asking something. He says, "What have they diversified their economy into to work around?" Oh no, I'm saying that they haven't really diversified their economy. What I said is that instead of investing the money that the Russian economy makes into diversifying their economy away from natural gas and fossil fuels and mining, that is the main things that drive the Russian economy, into IT or other things, they haven't. Instead, they've just poured their money into building up a war chest and driving their debt down. That's what they've done. They've basically built their economy, an economy that's stagnating. Sure, it isn't growing, but it's building up a reserve in order to survive sanctions. I'm not sure if that answers the question exactly.
that sounds like a good answer to me. Okay, but yeah, yeah, I'm gonna keep following this. Obviously, if more remarkable events happen, just send me a message. If an eventual
Mhm.
invasion happens, obviously we'll talk about that then.
Oh yeah,
And
it's gonna be really, yeah, I'm going to be following it closely. And yeah, uh I'm not very religious, but if anyone's gonna pray,
it's time.
this is the time to do it. Yes.
Uh, yeah. So everyone, this has been Richard Hannay. I'm leaving their Twitter in the chats at the moment. And yeah, thank you very much for coming on, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
You too. Have a great night.
Bye bye.
Right then. Bye bye.
Imagine since you're reacting live to the invasions. POV, you're on the ground. Jesus Christ.